The news about Ethan Vance was the talk of the town. He had been part of a marriage agreement with my family for years, a pact made when we were children. But during a recent mission, an explosion had taken the lower half of his body, leaving him permanently injured, and, as the whispers went, impotent. My stepsister, Clara, who had always seen me as her rival, seized the opportunity. She eagerly moved to confirm the engagement for herself, thrilled at the prospect of becoming Mrs. Vance. In her excitement, she laid claim to everything in our house that had once been mine. When I eventually left, it was with a single wooden box in my hands. To the outside world, it looked like I had been granted a reprieve from a terrible fate. Everyone said I had finally found relief after so much hardship. Only I knew the truth. I had narrowly escaped a nightmare I had already lived through once. In my previous life, I had been the one to marry Ethan. I used the precious medicines left to me by my grandfather, a renowned physician, to cure him completely. I became the wife of a decorated military officer, a position of great respect. But my success had come at a cost. In that life, it was Clara who had gone to the countryside, desperate to find a remedy for Ethan. There, she fell into the clutches of a local thug who abused her until she died from the torment. Ethan, once healed by my hand, never shared a bed with me. He kept me a virtual prisoner in our home, eventually allowing me to starve to death. His final words to me were chilling. "If you had just given the medicine to Clara sooner," he had snarled, "she wouldn't have been bullied to death. Now go repay your sins by serving her memory." It was only then, in my final moments, that I understood. They had been in love all along. Marrying me had been a desperate last-ditch effort to secure a cure. Now, with a second chance, I thought I could avoid that path. I hadn't expected Ethan to have already made up his mind this time around, but they still operated under the delusion that some miracle pill, not me, had been the source of his healing in that other life. When my father heard that Clara had solidified the engagement, his face fell. "Clara, stop this nonsense," he said, his voice strained. He then turned to me, his expression stern. "Amelia, you are the eldest. You have a responsibility to this family. Commander Vance is in a terrible condition, and he needs someone to take care of him. Clara isn't suited for that kind of life." Across from us, Ethan sat in his wheelchair, the air around him thick with the smell of antiseptic and medicine. His face was a stoic mask, as if he were completely detached from the conversation about his future. This was already so different from my past life. Clara clung to our father's arm, pouting. "Daddy, I don't care. I just love Ethan." She then shot a mocking glance in my direction. "Do you even understand what impotent means? It means living like a widow for the rest of your life. Just look at the pathetic state he's in." For the first time I could remember, my father looked at Clara with cold disapproval. Ethan's mother, sitting beside him, shifted uncomfortably but didn't dare contradict her potential daughter-in-law. Instead, she turned to me, her voice careful. "I heard Amelia's grandfather left behind some of his special elixirs. They're said to be incredibly effective for injuries like this. Amelia, if you're willing to marry into our family with the medicine, we are prepared to offer a dowry of $2,000. My father and stepmother both gasped. $2,000 was an unimaginable fortune when they barely earned $20 a month combined. But Ethan cut in before they could speak. "Mom, that kind of medicine is a scam. If we don't make it sound magical, who would we trick into marrying me? I only want to marry Clara." Ethan's mother looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Amelia, you really don't have it?" My grandfather had descended from a long line of royal physicians. His skills were legendary. Even the regional director had once sought his treatment personally. The medicine was real, of that there was no doubt. But I simply shook my head. Ethan scoffed. "See, I told you she's a liar." His mother's face fell, but my father and stepmother were still hesitant to let Clara marry a man they saw as having no future. Ethan, however, spoke with unwavering confidence. "I've already found a new treatment plan. Once everything is settled, I will return to the army. Marrying me will be a blessing for Clara." Clara nodded firmly. "Dad, Mom, I know the doctor. I can guarantee he will be able to cure Ethan." My parents were clearly unconvinced. Ethan's mother noticed their skepticism as well. Clara, stop making empty promises. If not, perhaps Amelia should marry him instead. She was raised by her grandfather. She knows how to care for the sick. Even if this doctor of yours fails, at least Amelia can take care of Ethan. She clearly hadn't given up on the idea of me marrying her son. Living in the capital, she was well aware of my grandfather's powerful reputation. Clara flew into a rage. That doctor will only work for me. If Ethan doesn't marry me, he won't get any treatment. You decide. Ethan reached out and clutched Clara's hand tightly. If I can't marry Clara, I would rather die. Left with no other choice, Ethan's mother began negotiating with my father and stepmother. The bride price was eventually raised to an astounding $5,000, plus a bicycle and a wedding banquet at the state-run hotel in town. I watched the entire exchange with a cold, detached expression. As they finalized the deal, I spoke for the first time. You aren't planning to touch the dowry my mother left me, are you? My father had married into my mother's family. Everything in the house, the furniture, the valuables, had belonged to her. Clara shot me a smug look. Who wants your old junk? Ethan is buying me everything brand new, but I do want one thing, she added, her eyes glinting. That wooden stamp box you used to have. Ethan's hand tightened on the armrest of his wheelchair, his gaze fixed on me. Even Clara's hands were trembling with nervous anticipation. When I nodded without a hint of hesitation, they both let out a quiet sigh of relief. Clara dashed into my room and snatched the box. Ethan took it from her and shook it, a rattling sound coming from within. They exchanged a look of pure delight before casting another cold glance in my direction. Ethan sneered, Amelia, I know you've always had a thing for me, but the only one I care about is Clara. So when the time comes, don't get all dramatic and try to cling to me. Seeing how desperate he was to create distance, I felt nothing but contempt. In our past life, he had married me only to avoid burdening Clara. After I cured him, he repaid my kindness by tormenting me to death, blaming me for keeping him from his true love. He couldn't stand the sight of me, so why shouldn't I grant him his wish and step aside? As long as they left me alone, I couldn't care less about their lives. My silence and sharp look seemed to unsettle him. Is that really how you talk to me now? He asked, his tone laced with indignation. In my past life, I had tiptoed around his fragile ego, encouraged him to stand again, and tolerated his endless abuse with quiet patience. Now, a single cold response was more than he could handle. You'd better remember your words, he snapped, before wheeling himself away in a fury. My father and stepmother were still uneasy about the marriage, knowing full well that Clara's claims about a miracle doctor were baseless. Amelia, my father began, didn't your grandfather leave behind any final notes or prescriptions? Ethan is your brother-in-law now. If you have anything, you need to hand it over. You can't let your sister suffer. It was funny. They never said anything like that to me in my last life. In fact, they had withheld the entire dowry from the Vance family and forced me to sign a document severing all ties with them on my wedding day, terrified I would become a burden. Before I could reply, Clara snapped, that old man was just a barefoot village quack. All that talk was just country folk exaggerating things they didn't understand. I looked at her, my voice turning to ice. If that's what you think of him, then don't come begging me when you end up a widow. Clara stomped her feet. You're cursing me. You're just jealous you couldn't become an officer's wife. Get her out of here before she ruins my relationship with Ethan. My stepmother gave me a dismissive glance. You're not even married yet. When Clara gets married, people will talk if you're still hanging around. They were rushing the wedding, terrified the Vance family would change their minds. They had no intention of finding a respectable match for me. I knew if I didn't agree to their plans, they'd likely tie me up and marry me off to the first person who would take me. So I made my own move first. I reached out to the Miller family and arranged to marry their son, Leo Miller. He had been bedridden for 10 years, completely unable to care for himself. Are you sure you want to marry him? Even my father, who rarely showed me any concern, was visibly shocked. I nodded firmly. In my past life, Leo had lived next door. Just before I starved to death, he had noticed something was wrong and sent someone to check on me. But Ethan had lied and sent them away. That very day, I signed the household transfer paperwork and moved into the Miller residence. Leo's condition was critical and required immediate acupuncture, but as soon as I entered the military family compound, I ran directly into Ethan and Clara. Clara's face contorted with fury. "You've got some nerve showing up here. Ethan is my fiancé, and you still have the gall to come knocking on doors in this compound?" Ethan turned to the guard at the gate and shouted, "What kind of job are you doing? Get this woman out of here." Just then, Mrs. Miller came out and took the bundle of my belongings from my hands. "Well, Ethan, look at you. Barking orders now. Are you trying to kick out my guest?" Clara lost her composure completely. "You old hag. Our Ethan is a battalion commander. How dare you speak to him so casually?" Mrs. Miller simply raised an eyebrow. "Ethan, is this the woman you're planning to marry?" Her sharp, appraising gaze made Clara flush red with embarrassment. She tried to speak again, but Ethan, his face grim, grabbed her arm roughly. "Shut up! If you can't speak properly, then don't speak at all!" Tears welled in Clara's eyes. Ethan ignored her and turned to Mrs. Miller and me with a forced apology. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't realize Amelia was your guest." Mrs. Miller didn't respond, simply leading me upstairs. It wasn't long before the entire compound was buzzing with the news that I was going to marry Leo Miller. Ethan and Clara showed up at the Miller house together. Clara's voice was like a siren. "Amelia, just because you picked up a trick or two from your barefoot doctor grandfather doesn't mean you can actually cure anyone. The Millers only have one son. What if something goes wrong? You won't be able to handle the consequences." Neighbors began to gather. Mrs. Miller had stepped out to buy the herbs I needed, leaving only the housekeeper, who was flustered by the aggressive confrontation. Ethan looked at me with absolute disgust. "You couldn't be my wife, so now you come up with this ridiculous scheme?" The small crowd erupted into chaos. "Shameless, torturing a patient just for vanity!" Someone shouted. "This is illegal medical practice. Someone call the police!" Ethan stood there, his face flushed, likely from some medication he was taking. But the coldness in his eyes was identical to the look he'd given me in my past life. To him, I was nothing more than a vain woman desperate to latch onto power. I had let him go, yet he still refused to leave me in peace. Clara stood by, tears shimmering in her eyes, and gave me a sorrowful look. "Sis, stop hurting people. Just go home. Ethan is willing to forgive the fact that you dumped him after his injury. He's even willing to plead your case with the commanding officer." Then my father and stepmother arrived, each grabbing one of my arms and trying to drag me away. "Let's go! Don't ruin things here." Just then, Mrs. Miller returned. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice sharp. Clara immediately exploded, spewing a torrent of accusations. She ranted about how I'd been useless and lazy my whole life, and how I was now a con artist pretending to be a healer. "Ma'am," she said directly to Mrs. Miller, "please don't be fooled by her. She doesn't know how to treat anyone." My father quickly added, "That's right. She's been a liar since she was a child. Don't let her delay your son's treatment." Mrs. Miller calmly pulled me into her arms. "Of course," she said coolly, her eyes sweeping over my family. "When you get a stepmother, you get a stepfather too. Amelia is a good girl. I begged her to be my daughter-in-law." Her words sent a shockwave through the crowd. The Miller family had significant status. Even with Leo bedridden for years, plenty of girls would have lined up for the chance to marry into their family. And yet, Mrs. Miller was saying she had begged me. Ethan's face went pale. The mood of the crowd shifted instantly, whispers and stifled laughter directed at Clara, my father, and my stepmother, who looked utterly humiliated. They left with their heads hung low. Once the crowd dispersed, Ethan yanked me aside, hissing through clenched teeth. "Amelia, go call off the engagement with Mrs. Miller. I'll introduce you to a cook from the cafeteria. He's not a bad guy. That way you won't have to spend the rest of your life alone." I scoffed. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" His expression flickered. "I'm doing this for your own good. Don't ruin your life out of spite just because I chose Clara over you." Ruin my life? The irony was suffocating. He was the one who had ruined my life, and now he dared to say such a thing. I shook his hand off me. "Worry about your own condition. The army isn't going to take in a cripple with nothing left down there. His eyes flared with rage as he realized I was looking directly at his lower body. "What did you say?" he growled. "I'm not done," he spat, his confidence returning. "The doctor Clara found has already started my treatment. I'll be running and jumping again in no time. It's just a matter of time before I'm back to full strength." The more I smirked, the darker his face became. "Ungrateful bitch," he seethed. "Just don't come crawling back to me later." I watched his furious silhouette stomp away and couldn't help but laugh quietly, as if I would ever need anything from him. He didn't know it yet, but in just one more week, that manhood he was so proud of would be gone for good. Leo's recovery progressed much faster than I had anticipated. In just 3 days, he had regained some sensation in his limbs. The accident had caused a high spinal cord injury, leaving him unable to move anything below his neck. When Mrs. Miller saw Leo's fingers twitch, she burst into tears of joy. She grabbed my hand, repeating over and over, "Thank you, Amelia. If it weren't for you, Leo's life would have been over. Don't worry. Once you marry into our family, I will treat you like my own daughter." The day before the wedding, tradition required me to return to my father's house briefly. Ethan happened to be there, helping decorate for his and Clara's big day. My entire family fawned over them, acting as if I were invisible. It wasn't until dinner that Clara finally acknowledged my presence. "Oh, wow, sis. You're here alone? Your fiancé didn't come to help out?" "Oh, right, I forgot. Your fiancé is a vegetable. You probably even have to wipe his ass for him." My old room had been completely taken over by Clara's belongings. My father shoved me into a dusty, cramped storage closet. "After all the trouble you've caused," he said coldly, "I'm going to pretend you were never my daughter." Letting me stay in that filthy closet before my wedding was, in his mind, an act of generosity. Before I could protest, the door slammed shut and was locked from the outside. Late that night, I was jolted awake by chaos. People were shouting, "Fire! Help! Put out the fire!" Thick, acrid smoke began pouring in through the cracks in the door. I covered my nose and mouth with a piece of cloth and banged on the door with all my might. I could hear my father, stepmother, and Clara outside, but none of them made a move to help. The door grew hotter and hotter. Then, I heard Ethan's voice, clear and cold through the wood. "Amelia, come out and apologize to Clara. Go back to the military compound and tell them the whole story about her framing you as something you made up. If they think you lied to marry into the Miller family, you might get a couple of years in jail. But if the truth gets out, Clara's reputation will be ruined forever. If you do this, I'll find you a solid country fellow to marry when you get out. No one will ever know you did time." I had always known Ethan was shameless, but this was a new level of depravity. "Screw you!" I screamed, my voice raw from the smoke. "I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I lie?" His voice turned colder than I had ever heard it. "Then die in this fire. Better that than embarrassing everyone." The smoke became suffocating. I choked and clawed at the door, my lungs burning. Just as the flames began to lick at the wood, I finally managed to break the lock and stumble out into the night air. The next day, Clara rode out of the compound in a car decorated with red ribbons. Neighbors and relatives watched with envy. Then someone in the crowd asked, "Hey, where's Amelia? Wasn't she supposed to get married today too?" My father glanced around before putting on a sorrowful expression. "She argued with us yesterday, stole money from the house, and ran away." One of the officers who had come with Ethan to pick up the bride sneered, "Sounds like she was just scared. I heard the Miller family even called an ambulance this morning. She must have botched the treatment on the commander's son." My stepmother eagerly jumped in, adding fuel to the fire, telling everyone how I had made wild claims about curing a paralyzed man despite having no real skills. The guests murmured among themselves. Jealous of her own sister, what kind of person does that? No wonder she's bad luck. My father wiped away fake tears. "I just hope Commander Miller doesn't take it out on our family." Just then, a military jeep pulled up to the gate. The crowd buzzed with excitement. "Wow, even the army sent a car. Captain Vance must really have some pull." Clara beamed with pride and stepped forward to open the Jeep's door, only to have her hand smacked away by a soldier. "This is Commander Miller's vehicle. You dare touch it?" My dad and stepmother went pale. The people from Ethan's side looked nervous. My father quickly stepped forward, waving a piece of paper. "I already signed the disownment letter with that disgraceful daughter yesterday. Amelia has nothing to do with us anymore." Clara shouted, "Whatever happened, it's all her fault. Go find her." But then the car door opened and I stepped out, wearing a bright red wedding dress. Standing beside me, upright and glowing with health, was Leo Miller. You're not burned?" My father stammered, his voice breaking. Ethan moved quickly, covering my father's mouth before he could say anything more. They had all assumed I was dead, having seen the room turn to black ash. They were so sure they had started slandering me with confidence. Now, seeing me standing there perfectly fine, they looked like they had seen a ghost. Clara rushed over, grabbing my hand with fake tears in her eyes. "Amelia, did the Miller family drag you back because their son died? You didn't want the marriage and ran away, didn't you? And now you've been caught and dragged back, getting mom and dad into trouble?" Leo chuckled, stepping forward. "You said I was dead?" Clara froze. One of the soldiers behind Leo raised his rifle and aimed it squarely at her. "You've got guts. Slandering the commander's name, trying to stage a fake marriage, and kidnapping someone. Are you asking to be shot?" Clara turned sheet white and threw herself into Ethan's arms. "Ethan, that's not what I meant. Please explain for me." But Ethan stood motionless, his eyes fixed on Leo. "Who are you supposed to be?" Ethan asked, his voice strained. Leo stepped forward, his presence exuding a calm authority. "You mean the cripple you just said was dead? Leo Miller?" "That's impossible." Ethan's voice shot up. "I saw the medics go into your house this morning." Leo nodded slightly. "Yes, my mother got a little too excited about the wedding and threw out her back. We had to call an ambulance for her." He turned to me and gently squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry you had to deal with all this. My father is away on duty and my mother is injured, so we'll have to postpone the tea ceremony." I gave him a small shake of my head to let him know it was fine. A nosy relative blurted out, "Amelia's husband, how are you all better now?" Leo gave the group a polite smile. "Thanks to Amelia's care, my condition finally took a turn for the better. My whole family says she's my lucky star. If no one minds, we'd be honored to invite everyone back to the compound for a small wedding toast." The crowd buzzed with excitement. A banquet inside the military compound was a rare honor. "But of course," Leo continued, his gaze shifting to my father and stepmother, "anyone who doesn't recognize my wife as family doesn't need to come." Clara saw the guests preparing to follow us and shouted, "My wedding is at a state-run restaurant, a place you people can't even afford. And Ethan is a battalion commander with a bright future, not like some people who rely on their parents for everything." Leo remained unruffled. He smiled and took a folded piece of paper from one of the guards, walking it over to Ethan. Ethan didn't flinch. "So I said something you didn't like. I'll apologize. I'm still a battalion commander, a decorated war hero." Leo nodded. "Yes, Captain Vance, you have made contributions. You will be given a new role accordingly." Ethan looked puzzled as he took the paper. As he read it, all the color drained from his face. The paper slipped from his fingers. A curious bystander picked it up and read it aloud. "Genital atrophy, grade 3 disability, recommended for retirement and reassignment." I didn't linger on the chaos that erupted behind me. I helped Leo into the car and sat beside him, my fingers brushing against the fine wool of my red wedding dress. The feeling was surreal. In my previous life, I had been shoved into the Vance house without so much as a new blouse, let alone a beautiful dress like this. The moment I had entered their home, the only thing I could smell was stale medicine and urine. Ethan had refused to go to the hospital, wallowing in self-pity. When I had tried to help, he had hurled a liquor bottle at my head. Now, Leo was holding my hand tightly. "Thank you, Amelia," he said, "for not abandoning me." I smiled at him and he pulled out a tissue to gently wipe the corners of my eyes. "Don't cry. From now on, we have nothing but good days ahead of us." Back at the compound, despite Leo's parents being absent, many people were helping to prepare a celebration. An older woman beamed as she pulled me around, introducing me. This is the girl who healed Leo, his lucky charm. I had never been welcomed like that. All I ever heard from my family was that I was a curse. The banquet lasted late into the night. After the last guests had left, Leo, his cheeks flushed, gently tugged me toward our room. Suddenly, Ethan jumped out and grabbed my arm. Amelia, you switched the medicine in the box, didn't you? Just because I chose Clara, you poisoned me. You ruined me. Leo stepped forward and shoved him hard. Say the word, you're a eunuch. Why is it so hard to say? I'm not, Ethan roared, his eyes bloodshot. He stared at me, his gaze full of rage and desperation. Why would you do this to me? Just because I didn't marry you? I let out a mocking laugh. Ethan, you really do think too highly of yourself. Do you actually believe every woman is as blind as Clara? As for revenge, I added, what a ridiculous thought. He refused to believe me. Then how do you explain what happened to me? You swapped the medicine. As he spoke, he pulled out a bracelet and tried to slip it onto my wrist. Amelia, I know you remember. I was wrong last time, okay? You always wanted this, didn't you? I'm giving it to you now. Just make me another pill, please. It was the Vance family bracelet given to their daughters-in-law. In my past life, Ethan had refused to let me wear it, saying I hadn't given him a child and didn't deserve it. I shoved the bracelet away with disgust. Take your trash and get out of here. Ethan stared at me in disbelief. Amelia, you didn't used to be like this. You only had eyes for me. You waited on me hand and foot. How could you possibly let go of me? Leo, seeing I'd had enough, called over a guard. Captain Vance is clearly unstable. Take him home to cool off. As they dragged a struggling Ethan away, I cut in coldly. The biggest mistake I ever made was pitying you. That broke him. He went limp, all the fight draining out of him. As he was led away, I finally felt like I could breathe again. I turned back to Leo, who simply smiled softly. Amelia, this is our wedding night. Later, you'd better thoroughly test how effective your treatment really was. He looked so smug I couldn't help but reach out and pinch his side. Laughing, Leo wrapped an arm around me and pulled me into our new room. As I lay in bed that night, exhausted but content, I had only one thought. We needed to stop giving Leo those strengthening tonics. The next morning, Clara's shrieking echoed through the compound. Leo handed me a robe and we stepped outside to see her storming out of the Vance house, throwing things everywhere. I want a divorce! Right now! Ethan, you're coming with me to file the papers today, you filthy piece of garbage. You lied to me, saying you'd recover. Ethan stood silently under the corridor, his face pale. He didn't say a word until his mother was pushed out in her wheelchair. Only then did he mutter, Clara, how did you become like this? He was obsessed with a version of her that never truly existed. He couldn't understand how the girl he thought had died for him could turn on him so viciously. The courtyard was in chaos. Soldiers came to mediate, but Ethan refused to agree to the divorce. I may be retired, but I still get a salary. I can support you. Clara shrieked. Who the hell wants to serve a eunuch for life? People like you become twisted maniacs. Ethan's whole body trembled with rage. After a long moment, his face ashen, he finally muttered, Fine, let's divorce. His mother was furious. Fine! Then return the bride price our family gave you. Clara spun around. I should be charging you for emotional damages. I'm not giving you a single penny. Suddenly, Mrs. Vance gasped for breath, clutched her chest, and collapsed. Ethan's eyes went wide with horror. He lifted her onto his back and started rushing toward the hospital. I let out a sigh. Seeing that Leo wasn't stopping me, I walked down the stairs. Stop, I said to Ethan. A heart condition needs emergency treatment. If you wait until you get to the hospital, it might be too late. I took his mother from him and began performing acupressure. When the doctor arrived, he examined her and then looked at me. Thank goodness for this comrade. If not for her, the patient could have been in real danger. Ethan stared at me, his eyes wide with shock, as his mother was loaded into the ambulance. He looked like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. Leo walked up beside me and casually took my hand, which was cramped from the pressure work, and began to gently massage it. What an ungrateful bastard. he muttered. Even a crab knows how to show gratitude. The warmth from his hands traveled straight to my heart. The burden I had carried for 2 lifetimes began to lift. I looked at Leo and said, "Thank you." That night, I told him everything about my past life. When I finished, he pulled me into a tight embrace, his voice thick with pain. "So that's why you called him a bastard. It's all over now, Amelia. You're safe." "You don't think I'm a bad person?" I asked, looking up at him, "for watching him become what he is and doing nothing?" Leo snorted. "He brought it on himself. Besides, he still owes you for trying to burn you alive. That debt hasn't even been settled." Seeing how fiercely he defended me, I finally felt at peace. Before Ethan was reassigned, he showed up at our door with a large pile of gifts. "I used to be your brother-in-law," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." While I was still processing his apology, Leo stepped in smoothly. "The best way to make it up to her is to stay far away." I nodded in agreement. Ethan's face fell, but he gave me one last long look, then turned and left without another word. Not long after, my father, stepmother, and Clara showed up at the compound gates, but the guards, under instructions from our household, refused to let them in. My father screamed my name until he was hoarse, but I simply picked up the phone and called the police. Sometime later, I heard news about Ethan. His mother had passed away. He had been set up with a rural girl, tricking her into marriage without revealing the truth. The girl, however, was sharp. She became pregnant by another man and passed the child off as his. The Vance family, too embarrassed to make it public, quietly raised the child. Ethan spent his days drinking. One rainy night, he stumbled, fell into a drainage ditch, and drowned. I didn't dwell on it. I pushed the stroller outside to get some sun. Leo, just off work, took the stroller and handed me a bag of peach crisps. "Your old family has been sent to a re-education farm," he said. "Want me to pull some strings?" I shook my head. "There's no point. Let them be." The baby in the stroller smiled and cooed softly. I reached out my hands, and Leo smiled as he scooped up our little one. "You agree with Mommy too, huh?" The sunlight poured down, tracing a golden outline around them. Smiling, I popped a piece of peach crisp into my mouth. It tasted especially sweet.
So, I'm glad you're good, Mel. I said that line with you, good. I love Monsters, Inc. 2319! We have 2319! Nick. T3. Thank you, Nick. If you subscribe at tier 3, I send you a postcard and some stickers. 2 cats are monitoring this. Yes, yeah. Sleepy little overseers. You have all the goodies? Well, you can always have more. I wonder what the evolutionary reason for getting up noise... Oh. Do we have to signal to other group members that we are A, getting up, and B, old? I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die. It's a really good one, Yak. I'm sticking them all over the office. Sounds like there's plenty of office to go around. Ew! Banger. Work on my planner? Hell yeah. Good, Daisy. Nice to see you. Josh, damn. New building last... Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Banger. I should have left the banana just better. Why is that? Hell yeah, sandwiches, tacos. It's Taco Tuesday, right? Yum.